Purpose of test automation. Automated testing helps reduce the burden of tedious, slower manual testing and quickly resolves potential problems. Using automated tools, automated testing can help you quickly set up test preconditions, execute tests, and compare actual outcomes to expected outcomes, ultimately reducing the time spent on testing. We can use automated testing for regression, functional, or load testing. It's common to use the acronym SUT as an acronym for System Under Test, depending on the project. Some teams may write the software used for testing alongside the system under test in the same code repository or a separate repository. For example, terms that want to ensure new features are free of errors before adding them to the branch for the main codebase can have test cases automatically run each time new code is added to their feature branch. This provides fast feedback on the quality of the code. On the other hand, some test code may cause issues when written in the same repository as the system under test, SUT. There was a time when I worked on a project where the test software produced IntelliSense conflict with the system under test, SUT. IntelliSense is a feature included in many code editors that provides suggestions for methods you can use based on the software you're using. For example, JavaScript has methods such as map and filter when working with array data structures. The methods would show in the code editor as you type. However, in our project, IntelliSense suggestions for the test software were overriding the system under test SUT suggestions, making it difficult to access the desired methods conveniently, so we moved the test software into a separate repository. So, in the end, although we would have preferred to keep the test software in the same repository as the system under test SUT, it worked better for us to have the code in its own repository to avoid issues. Test automation is not only a means of repeatedly running test cases on various versions of the system under test SUT or in different environments, but it also requires designing the testware. Testware includes everything produced during the testing process, from planning to designing to executing to reporting. This makes it easier to keep track of everything and ensure the testing is effective. Examples of testware are software, documentation, test cases, test environments, test data. Testware is necessary for any testing activities and for test automation specifically. Testware could be necessary for implementing automating test cases, monitoring and controlling the execution of automated tests, interpreting, reporting, and logging the automated test results. There are different ways to interact with a system under test SUT when using test automation, such as testing through the public interfaces to classes, modules, or libraries of the system under test SUT, also known as API testing. Testing through the user interface of the system under test SUT, for example, the graphical user interface, also known as the GUI, or the command line interface, also known as the CLI. Testing through a service or protocol, such as a message queue that stores messages until they are retrieved by another program. The objectives of test automation include improving test efficiency. This means increasing the number of test cases executed in a given time. Providing wider function coverage. This means adding test cases to cover as many lines of code and functions as possible. Reducing the total test cost means things like creating test suites that can be run on multiple platforms with little or no modifications. Performing tests that manual testers can't. This means using test automation to achieve tasks that are difficult or impossible for a human to perform. For example, checking if a web app can handle over 1 million concurrent users. Shortening the test execution period. In most cases, computers can execute test cases faster than humans. Increasing the test frequency and reducing the time required for test cycles. This means being able to execute test suites more often so that the issues can be found and fixed faster. The advantages of test automation include more tests can be run per build. The possibility to create tests that cannot be done manually. This means running tests in real time, remotely, or in parallel. Tests can be more complex. Tests run faster. Tests are less subject to operator error. More effective and efficient use of testing resources, quicker feedback regarding software quality, improved system reliability, for example, repeatability or consistency of results. Improved consistency of tests, for example, test cases can be relied on to produce the same results on each run. Disadvantages of test automation include the additional costs involved in setting up and maintaining the automation efforts. The initial investment required to set up the test automation solution, also known as the TAS. The additional technologies that are required, for example, a test automation tool requires a programming language installed on the machine that will execute the tests. The team needs to have the necessary development and automation skills. A TAS requires ongoing maintenance. This means continuously updating the TAS to keep up with the current state of the system under test. SUT. Distractions from the testing objectives. Focusing on writing scripts to automate test cases can reduce how often you execute tests. Tests can become more complex. When more code is added to the TAS, it can become difficult to understand, debug, and maintain the code. Additional errors may be introduced by automation, such as incorrectly selecting web page elements leading to failing tests. The limitations of test automation include: not all manual tests can be automated. For example, some pages use Google CAPTCHA, which requires human intervention to solve a puzzle before granting specific permissions. Here we can see an example of a typical CAPTCHA for a web page. The automation can only check machine interpretable results, so if the software under test requires a human to interpret the results of a test, it cannot be automated. The automation can only check actual results that can be verified by an automated test oracle. A test oracle is a mechanism to determine whether a given test case passed or failed. In most cases, this is done by comparing the actual output of the system under test, SUT, with the expected outputs. Since automated tests rely on a test oracle, it's impossible to automate test cases such as usability testing with no clear pass or fail criteria. Test automation is not a replacement for exploratory testing. Exploratory testing is a testing type where the tester can explore the software to find defects. It's not scripted like most automated testing, allowing testers to discover issues the team didn't originally plan to handle. To summarize, we gained an introduction to the test automation and its advantages and disadvantages. Automation can help speed up the testing process, increase frequency of tests, and produce more reliable results. However, there are also some disadvantages to automation, such as the cost and time needed to set up and maintain automation efforts, as well as the need for specific development and automation skills. Additionally, not all tests can be automated, and not all results can be verified by an automated test oracle. In the next video, we will discuss success factors in test automation.